The colony of Nerth 9 looked broken from orbit, as if someone had built a city on the back of a sleeping machine and then forgotten to finish the instructions. Silver towers rose from violet forests in uneven rows, some shining with new solar glass, others leaning under the weight of rust, moss, and old meteor scars. Between them, enormous atmospheric rings floated in the orange sky, humming slowly as they filtered the thin alien air into something humans could breathe without coughing up their regrets. Arin Vale watched the view from the shuttle window and decided with professional confidence that the entire place looked like a repair bill with weather. The pilot, a narrow-faced man with 4 mechanical fingers and the cheerful attitude of someone who never personally fixed anything, glanced back at him. "First time on Nerth?" "Yes." "Then don't trust the clocks." Arin lowered his inspection tablet. "The clocks? They lie to visitors." "That's comforting. Only by a few minutes, sometimes by 3 years, but that's rare." Arin stared at him. The pilot laughed. "Relax. Colony joke." Arin did not laugh immediately. He had been an engineer for 12 years, and engineers were trained to respect 3 things: gravity, pressure seals, and sentences that began as jokes but ended with paperwork. He looked again at the colony below, where blue rivers moved in perfectly straight lines through the forests, too straight to be natural, and where old signal pylons blinked like tired eyes. He had come to inspect Relay Station 17, a failing atmospheric control node buried beneath the colony's oldest district. The relay had been sending impossible error codes for 6 months, pressure drops in sealed chambers, temperature spikes in empty tunnels, and once a maintenance request signed by a technician who had died before the colony was founded. The central authority had called it data corruption. Arin called it someone else's nightmare, which unfortunately meant it had become his job. The shuttle landed with a soft, metallic groan at the edge of a market square, crowded with settlers, traders, service drones, and tall alien colonists whose long ears rose through their hair like delicate blades. Many looked almost human, except for their luminous eyes, faintly patterned skin, and the graceful way they moved, as if every step had been taught by music. Arin stepped down the ramp with his tool case in one hand and his tablet in the other, breathing air that smelled of rain, hot circuitry, and something sweet frying in oil. A customs drone floated toward him, scanned his face, and said, "Welcome back, Arin Vale." He stopped. The drone's blue lens blinked. Arin leaned closer. "Back? Welcome back, Arin Vale," it repeated pleasantly. "I've never been here. Local system records disagree. That makes 2 of us." The pilot passed behind him and whispered, "Don't trust the clocks, or the drones, or the soup if it glows green." Before Arin could answer, something small struck him around the waist with the force of a runaway cleaning bot. His tool case hit the ground, a pair of thin arms wrapped tightly around him. "You finally came," a child's voice said against his jacket. "Mom has been waiting for you." Arin froze completely. The market seemed to fall silent in widening circles. A fruit seller stopped weighing crystal pears. A security officer turned his head. Even a nearby cooking machine paused mid-sizzle, as if the oil itself wanted to hear the explanation. Arin slowly looked down. A little girl, perhaps 7 or 8 years old, clung to him with absolute certainty. She looked almost human, with soft, fair skin, bright silver-blue eyes, long golden hair tied with tiny copper rings, and long, elegant ears that poked through her curls. Her expression was not frightened or confused. She looked relieved, as if Arin had merely arrived late for dinner. He raised one hand carefully. "Hello." She looked up and smiled. "You're taller than in my dream. That's good. I try to stand properly. You took forever. I apologize. Traffic between star systems is terrible." The girl nodded seriously. "Mum said humans make jokes when they are scared." "I'm not scared. A small, spider-shaped cargo robot crawled over his drop tool case and beeped. Arin flinched. The girl narrowed her eyes. A little scared. A professional amount. She released him only to grab his sleeve with both hands. Come on. Mom will cry if we wait. That sounds emotionally dangerous. Maybe we should prepare forms first. She began pulling him through the market. For a small child, she had the determination of a military tractor. Arin stumbled after her, glancing at the watching crowd with the desperate smile of a man hoping someone would explain why he had been adopted by a stranger in public. A merchant called out, "Liora, does your mother know you're kidnapping engineers again?" The girl shouted back, "Only this one!" Arin pointed weakly at himself. "Again?" The merchant laughed and returned to his glowing pears. "Your name is Liora?" Arin asked. "Yes, I'm Arin. I know. Of course you do. Everyone here knows things I don't." Liora guided him beneath hanging lanterns filled with tiny orbiting sparks. Drones drifted overhead, projecting advertisements for oxygen filters, memory crystals, and a noodle shop that promised no temporal side effects this week. The city around him was beautiful in an uneasy way. Ancient alien walls stood beneath newer human platforms. Cables ran across carved stone. Holographic signs flickered over doorways older than the first Earth colony ship. Everywhere, old machines hummed beneath the streets, deep and slow, like a buried heart. Arin tried to slow down. "Liora, listen. I think you may have mistaken me for someone else." She stopped so suddenly he nearly stepped on her heel. Then she turned and studied his face. Her silver blue eyes moved from his dark hair to the scar on his chin, then to the faded patch on his jacket. "No," she said. "You're him." "Him who?" "The man from the light." Arin felt the humor drain out of him for a moment. "What light?" She bit her lip, suddenly less certain. "The one Mom doesn't talk about when she thinks I'm asleep." The market noise returned around them, but quieter now in Arin's ears. Somewhere above, one of the atmospheric rings pulsed, dimming the sunlight for a breath. His tablet vibrated in his pocket. He pulled it out and saw a new system alert from the colony network. Identity confirmed. Relay Station 17, access restored. Welcome, Arin Vale. Last visit. Classified. His mouth went dry. "That's impossible," he whispered. Liora rose on her toes to peek at the screen. "The machines remember you too. I don't remember them." "That's okay." She took his hand again, gentler this time. "Mom remembered enough for both of you." Arin looked toward the distant towers, toward the old district where the streets sank into blue mist and ancient pylons blinked in patterns no modern engineer had ever decoded. He had arrived expecting broken valves, corrupted data, perhaps a relay core with a dramatic personality problem. He had not expected a child with long ears and bright eyes to know his name. He had not expected a city to welcome him back. And he certainly had not expected, after 12 years of drifting from colony to colony with nothing waiting for him but work orders and bad coffee, to hear that somewhere on this strange world, someone had been waiting for him for years. Liora squeezed his hand. "Come," she said softly, "before Mom starts pretending she isn't looking out the window again." Arin glanced down at her. "Does she do that often?" "Every day. That sounds unhealthy." "She says it's patience." "And what do you call it?" Liora smiled. "Very dramatic window staring." Despite himself, Arin laughed. The sound felt strange in his chest, lighter than it should have been. Then he picked up his tool case, followed the child into the old streets of Nerth 9, and tried not to think about the fact that every clock they passed had stopped at the exact same minute he had landed. Liora led Arin away from the market and into the old quarter, where the city stopped pretending it had been built by normal hands. The streets curved without reason, bending around towers of black stone veined with blue light. Bridges floated between rooftops without supports. Transparent pipes carried silver liquid above their heads, pulsing softly like the veins of some enormous creature sleeping beneath the colony. Every few steps, Arin saw maintenance panels from 3 different civilizations bolted over one another, as if generations of engineers had looked at the original design and politely decided not to understand it. "This place is illegal in at least 7 engineering manuals," he muttered. Liora looked proud. "Mom says our house has character." Character is what people say when the floor occasionally whispers. The floor only whispers during storms. That is not better. She giggled and pulled him along a narrow passage where tiny cleaning drones scattered out of their way like frightened metal beetles. One bumped into Arin's boot, spun twice, and projected a warning in 3 languages. Liora bent down and patted it. "It's okay. He's the human." The drone immediately stopped beeping, folded its little legs, and bowed. Arin stared. Did that machine just recognize me? "It's polite." That was not politeness. That was suspiciously personal. They reached a quiet lane overlooking luminous fields beyond the settlement wall. Tall stalks of blue grain swayed under the orange sky, each one glowing at the tip like a candle. At the end of the lane stood a house partly made of white stone and partly of old starship hull plating, its windows wide and rounded, its roof covered in small solar petals turning slowly toward the sun. A wind chime made from broken circuit keys sang in the doorway. Liora slowed. For the first time since she had crashed into him at the spaceport, she looked nervous. "She's inside," she whispered. She knew today would feel different. Arin adjusted his grip on the tool case. "Liora, before we go in, I need you to understand something. I don't remember your mother. I don't remember this colony. I don't remember being anyone's long-awaited mysterious person. That's okay. It may not be okay for her. She says memory can be wounded." Arin had no joke ready for that. The door opened before Liora touched it. A woman stood there, still as moonlight. She looked almost human, but not quite. Her skin was pale and warm. Her long golden hair fell over one shoulder in soft waves, and her ears were long and graceful, tapering through her hair with an elegance that made every movement seem deliberate. Her eyes were silver, not the flat silver of metal, but the shifting silver of rain seen under starlight. She wore a simple dark blue dress with tiny luminous threads woven through the sleeves. No crown, no armor, no grand decoration. And yet Arin felt, with sudden certainty, that if the whole street had bowed to her, it would not have seemed strange. She looked at him. Her lips parted slightly. For several seconds, nobody spoke. Then Liora lifted one hand. "I found him." The woman breathed out and the sound trembled. "Yes," she whispered. "You did." Arin felt like an intruder inside someone else's miracle. "I'm sorry," he said carefully. "I think there has been some kind of mistake." The woman smiled, but her eyes shone with pain. "You said that the first time too." A chill moved through him. "We've met?" "Not the way you mean." "That answer is very popular on this planet." Liora slipped past her mother into the house. "I told him you'd do dramatic window staring." The woman closed her eyes briefly. "Liora, it's true. I call it waiting. He said it sounded unhealthy." Arin raised his hand. "In my defense, I didn't know she was going to quote me in front of the patient." The woman laughed softly, and the sound changed the room before he had even entered it. It was quiet, tired, and warm. She stepped aside. "Please come in, Arin Vale." He hesitated only a moment before crossing the threshold. Inside, the house was filled with strange contradictions. A child's drawings covered one wall, stars, ships, a woman with long ears, and a dark-haired man drawn again and again with increasingly inaccurate shoulders. On another wall, old navigation maps glowed in suspended glass. A service robot rolled out from the kitchen, shaped like a polished kettle with 4 spindly arms. "Guest identified," it announced. "Waiting protocol complete after 2,911 days." Emotional snacks recommended. Arin blinked. Emotional snacks? The robot opened its chest compartment and offered a plate of small round pastries. Liora took one immediately. They're for emergencies. What kind of emergencies? Crying, awkward silence, visitors who forgot they were important. Arin accepted a pastry because refusing felt dangerous. It tasted sweet, spicy, and faintly electric. The woman watched him with an expression so tender that it made him uncomfortable. Not because it was unwelcome, but because he could not find where to place it inside himself. "My name is Elinara," she said. "And no, you are not mad. At least not because of this." That's reassuringly specific. She crossed to a small cabinet and opened a sealed drawer. From inside, she lifted a damaged emergency beacon. Its casing was burned black along one edge. Human military-grade alloy. Old model. Arin knew the design instantly because he had repaired dozens like it early in his career. Then he saw the identification strip. Arin Vale, Civilian Rescue Corps, temporary command access. His breath caught. "That can't be mine," he said. "It is. I lost one like this during the helix evacuation." Elinara nodded slowly. The room seemed to tilt. The helix evacuation had happened 8 years ago, near a collapsing orbital habitat far from Nerth 9. A disaster of fire, radiation, broken ships, and screaming comm channels. Arin had been younger then, foolish enough to fly into debris fields because someone had to. He remembered sealing refugees into escape pods. He remembered activating emergency autopilot sequences. He remembered a burst of white light swallowing the last transport before his own ship lost power. He had never known who survived. Elinara touched the beacon with her thumb. "Your signal guided our pod out of the collapse. I was inside with 47 others. The engines were dead. The radiation shield was failing. Then your code entered our system and forced the pod through a spatial corridor no one had seen before. That corridor shouldn't have existed. It existed for 8 minutes. I didn't create it." "No," she said, "but you opened the door." Liora climbed onto a chair and swung her legs. "Mum says you disappeared into the light after saving everyone. I mostly remember hitting my head on a console." "That is less poetic." "It was very dramatic for the console." Elinara laughed again, but this time tears gathered in her eyes. "After the rescue, I searched every registry, every survivors list, every station report. I found your name once, then it vanished from the files. People told me you had died. Others said the corridor had folded time around your ship. One priest told me you were probably a star spirit, but he also tried to sell me blessed batteries, so I did not trust him. That was wise. For years, the colony machines responded to your code. Doors opened when they should not. Old systems woke whenever Liora dreamed of you. I thought grief had made me foolish." Liora frowned. "You are not foolish." "No," Arin said quietly. "You're not." Elinara looked at him, and for a moment the years between them felt visible, like dust in sunlight. "I waited because I saw you return." Arin's fingers tightened around the beacon. "Saw me?" "In the corridor. For a heartbeat before the light threw us out near Nerth, I saw this house, this room. Liora older than she was supposed to be, and you standing here with that same confused expression." Liora nodded. "It's your main expression." Arin looked at her. "I have others. You have worried, confused, offended, confused, and pretending not to be confused." The service robot raised one arm. "Confirmed." Arin pointed at it. "You are not helping." But the humor could not fully cover the unease now unfolding inside him. He looked at the glowing maps, the ancient lines beneath the colony, the beacon that should have been lost forever. From his pocket, his tablet chirped again. "Relay Station 17. Synchronization initiated. Return sequence partial." Subject: Arin Vale. Anchor: Elinara. Secondary anchor: Liora. The lights in the house flickered. Outside, the wind chime rang without wind. Liora stopped swinging her legs. Elinara's face went pale. Arin stared at the words until they blurred. What does it mean by anchor? The floor beneath them gave a deep mechanical hum, old and enormous. Elinara stepped closer to him, her voice barely above a whisper. It means the colony has been waiting too. The hum beneath Elinara's house deepened until every cup, window and forgotten spoon began trembling as though the planet itself had taken a breath and disliked what it tasted. Arin stood in the center of the room with the old beacon in one hand and his tablet in the other, watching numbers spill across the screen faster than his mind could catch them. Relay Station 17 was no longer reporting failure. It was waking up. Outside, the luminous blue fields bent in a wind that came from no direction. The atmospheric rings in the orange sky turned slowly, then stopped, all of them aligned above the old district like the eyes of a gigantic machine. Across the lane, doors opened by themselves. Streetlights flickered in patterns. Somewhere, a security siren began to wail, then changed its mind and politely coughed twice before dying. Liora slipped her small hand into Arin's. Is this bad? Arin looked at the floor as another pulse rolled through the house. In engineering terms, this is what we call extremely rude. The service robot rolled from the kitchen carrying emergency pastries on a tray. Emotional snacks recommended at maximum level. Elinara took Liora's shoulders gently. Stay close to me. No, Arin said, staring at the symbols forming on his tablet. Stay close to both of us. Elinara looked at him. He swallowed. The relay calls you anchors. If this system is tied to the corridor that saved you, it may be using our biological signatures to stabilize itself, or to restart. That sounds dangerous. It's definitely not a recipe. The floor split open with a clean line of blue light. Liora gasped, but instead of crumbling, the house unfolded. Panels shifted aside, revealing an ancient stairway descending into darkness beneath the foundation. Cold silver light rose from below. The air smelled of rain, metal, and old stars. Arin let out a weak laugh. Of course your house has a secret underground alien machine. Elinara's mouth curved despite her fear. I told you it had character. No, character is creaky doors. This is archaeology with teeth. They descended because there was no other choice. Below the house stretched a vast chamber impossible to fit beneath any street. Its walls were made of black stone and transparent crystal, and behind the crystal moved streams of starlight, as if the colony had been built over a river that flowed through space itself. At the center stood a circular device shaped like a broken crown, surrounded by floating pieces of machinery that rotated without touching anything. Arin recognized none of it. That frightened him more than if he had recognized everything. His tablet flashed. Return sequence unstable. Defense protocol active. Remove temporal contamination. The floating machinery changed direction. From the walls, tall metal figures unfolded. Thin, faceless machines with arms like blades and bodies filled with blue fire. Dormant defense units. They stepped forward in perfect silence. Liora lifted one finger at them. Excuse me, we are having a family problem. One machine turned its blank head toward her. Arin whispered, Liora, maybe don't negotiate with the murder furniture. The nearest unit lunged. Arin moved before fear could stop him. He shoved Elinara and Liora behind a stone column and threw his tool case open. A pulse cutter, 2 magnetic clamps, a coil patcher, and half a sandwich fell out. He grabbed the pulse cutter. Elinara stared. Why is there food in your tool case? Emergency sandwich. For machines? For me, usually. A defense unit struck the column, showering sparks over them. Arin fired the pulse cutter into its knee joint. The beam barely slowed it. That was my strongest setting, he muttered. Liora peered around the column. Try its neck. It doesn't have a neck. Then that is its weakness. Elinara snatched a fallen crystal rod from the floor and swung it with surprising force, smashing the machine's arm aside before it could strike again. Arin blinked at her. She gave him a sharp look. I survived 8 years of waiting. Did you think I only stared out windows? Remind me never to insult your hobbies. Together, they moved toward the central device. Arin began to understand the rhythm of the chamber. The machines were not simply attacking, they were protecting the corridor generator from anything it considered impossible. And to this ancient system, he was impossible. Elinara was impossible. Liora, born with memories of a future that had not yet happened, was impossible most of all. At the base of the broken crown, a hologram appeared. A map of the helix disaster, the collapsing habitat, the refugee pod, his rescue signal, the corridor opening like a wound in space. Arin saw his younger self on the recording, frantic and stubborn, rerouting power while alarms screamed. He saw the pod vanish into light. Then he saw something he had never known. The corridor had not opened because he commanded it. It had opened because Elinara, dying inside the pod, had reached toward his signal with desperate hope, and the ancient machine beneath Nerth 9 had answered across impossible distance. They had saved each other. The realization struck him harder than the battle. All these years he had carried the helix evacuation as a ledger of failures, remembering only the names he could not confirm, the ships he could not reach, the silence afterward. He had drifted from colony to colony because movement was easier than belonging. But here, in this hidden chamber, stood the proof that one act of courage had continued living without him. It had become a woman's faith, a child's dream, a home with an extra dinner plate. Another machine advanced. Liora grabbed one of Arin's magnetic clamps and slapped it onto the unit's leg. The clamp locked. The machine toppled sideways with a heavy crash. Liora folded her arms. Interrupting our reunion is very bad manners. The machine sparked helplessly. Arin stared at her. You are terrifying. She smiled. Mom says I get that from hope. Elinara reached the central controls. Arin! He joined her before the rotating crown. Symbols moved across the crystal surface, changing when his hand came near. The machine wanted a command from him, from Elinara, from Liora. 3 anchors, 3 choices. If we shut it down wrong, Arin said, the corridor could collapse through the colony. And if we do nothing? The defense system removes us, then probably everyone who touched the anomaly. Liora raised her hand. I vote for not being removed. Strong proposal, Arin said. Elinara placed her hand on the crystal. Then tell it what we are. Arin looked at her. For the first time since arriving, he did not feel like a stranger dragged into someone else's story. He felt the shape of his own fear, and beneath it the smaller but stronger thing he had forgotten how to trust. He placed his hand beside hers. Liora squeezed between them and put both small palms on the glowing surface. The machine searched them. Memories poured through the chamber. Arin sending the rescue code into fire. Elinara holding a dying pod together with whispered prayers. Little Liora setting an extra plate at dinner. Clocks stopping at his arrival. A window watched every evening until waiting became almost a language. Arin spoke clearly. We are not contamination. We are the result. The chamber shuddered. The defense units froze. Elinara's voice joined his. The corridor did not break time. It carried life through it, Liora added very seriously. And it is rude to attack guests. For one breath, nothing happened. Then the broken crown blazed with white-blue light. The defense machines lowered their arms. Across the walls, hostile warnings dissolved into new words. Anchors accepted, return sequence closed, preservation mode restored. The terrible pressure in the air vanished. Above them, through layers of stone and house and sky, The atmospheric rings began moving again. The colony exhaled. When they climbed back into the house, dawn had touched the fields. The clocks that had stopped at Arin's landing began ticking forward, not loudly, but bravely. The service robot rolled up, inspected them, and announced, "Family reunion survived. Sandwich status, questionable." Arin opened his tool case and found the emergency sandwich flattened into a tragic square. Liora patted his arm. "It died a hero." Elinara laughed, and this time there were no tears hidden in it. In the days that followed, Arin repaired Relay Station 17 properly, though properly required arguing with a machine older than human language, and labeling several cables, "Do not touch unless emotionally prepared." The colony records were restored. The missing helix survivors were finally confirmed. Elinara no longer had to prove that the man who saved them had existed. Liora proudly told everyone that she had found him because adults were too slow. And Arin changed. He still fixed broken machines, still made jokes when afraid, still distrusted glowing soup, but he stopped treating every place as temporary. He added his name to the house registry. He placed his tools beside the door. On his first evening there, Elenara set 3 plates on the table, then paused. Arin quietly added a 4th. "For who?" Liora asked. He smiled toward the window overlooking the blue fields. "For anyone who is still trying to find their way home." Liora nodded as if this was the wisest engineering principle ever spoken. That night, the old colony hummed gently beneath them, no longer like a warning, but like a heart remembering its rhythm. And when Arin looked at Elinara and Liora across the warm light of the table, he understood that he had not returned to a past he had forgotten. He had arrived at a future that had refused to give up on him.